Hey guys, it's Josh with Budget Mechanic. Today in this video I'm going to be talking about smells. Smells are really tough to track down, but it's important that you do because they can often be coming from something that is potentially expensive to fix or even dangerous. In this video I'm going to show you the top 10 smells that you would smell in your car and how to track them down. So obviously on this video I can't show you a smell, but I'm going to do my best to describe them. And luckily, when a car has a problem, usually there's other warning signs that go along with the smell, and I'm going to show you how to check those out. So the first one is the burning oil smell. Burning oil can be kind of a catch-all for people. So they bring their car into me and everyone says it's burning oil. And I get into it and often it's not. However, burning oil is a common problem, and it also comes with some other symptoms, and I'm going to show you what those are. So the burning oil smell comes from oil, burning. That's your engine oil, your transmission fluid, power steering fluid, dripping onto something that's hot, usually an exhaust manifold or exhaust pipes. One way you can confirm that it's an oil problem is you'll see smoke, you'll see oil dripping, and so you want to get under your hood and really visually inspect. Once the car's hot, it's been running, that's when you'll see it. And so a really common one is valve cover gaskets. Here on this 4-cylinder, it's really easy to check. At the top of the engine there's this cover, and the gasket will start leaking, and it will leak down onto this exhaust manifold, which is the hottest part of the exhaust, and that's where you get the burning. So oftentimes you'll see oil leaking above the manifold, you'll see smoke coming up. Oftentimes at stop signs when your car's not moving, you'll see smoke, sometimes even escaping under the hood. You can see smoke coming out of the back of the engine because the exhaust pipe runs underneath the car, and you can get dripping in the back on top of that exhaust pipe. If you have a V6, this is all going to be different orientation, and you'll have more exhaust pipes, more opportunity for burning oil. So I can see on this car that oil's leaking out of this gasket. I got a little oil pooling here. You can see residue of oil all the way down to this exhaust manifold, and that's what's creating the burning oil on this car. You want to do this while the engine is hot because that's when it happens. But obviously be careful because the exhaust is super hot. So a small oil leak onto the exhaust is going to be unpleasant, smelly, maybe create a little smoke, but it's not the end of the world. But if it becomes a significant leak, it can actually become a fire hazard when there's enough oil to actually burn. Obviously that is pretty serious, so you want to take care of it before it gets bad. So the next one is a musty, acidic smell coming out of your AC vents. So you turn on the AC, get that musty odor, turn off the AC, and it goes away. So this is most likely going to be one of three things: dirty cabin filter, a leaking evaporator core, or your dryer, usually in your condenser, has gone bad. A lot of people don't know about the cabin filter, but it's actually a very important part of your AC because it filters out the debris and the dust and the leaves that get brought in from the outside air. And if there's enough debris in that filter, it can actually start to create mold or bacteria, stuff that doesn't smell good and gets pumped out of your AC vents. Usually the filter is found behind the glove box. Checking your cabin filter is really easy and cheap to do yourself, so I always start with that. Another really common reason for that musty, acidic smell coming out of your AC vents is a leaking evaporator. And the evaporator is a part of your AC that sits kind of down inside your dash on most cars. And obviously one really easy way to tell if that's leaking is your AC will stop working as well because refrigerant is leaking out of the system. But in order to truly diagnose that, you're going to need to do a leak test, have some knowledge of AC systems. If you want more information, we made a video on AC, which you can check out in the link above. So your air conditioning system is not supposed to have any moisture in it. If moisture gets in, it can create mold, mildew, and you'll get that smell. Now there's an element of your AC called the dryer, which is supposed to remove any moisture that's in the system. Those can go bad, they can get oversaturated and not work anymore, and they need to be replaced. Nowadays, often the dryer is built into your condenser, which is up here, and you have to replace the whole condenser. So the next one is really common. It's a hot, sweet smell after the car's warmed up or you've been driving it a while. Some people describe it as like a syrup smell, which I don't totally get, but whatever. And this is your engine coolant leaking out somewhere. And this can happen in your engine under the hood, or it can actually happen in the cab as well. So if your car is leaking coolant, you want to know what coolant smells like, you can just pop your radiator cap off and smell what's in there. Now, the reason you're smelling it is because it's leaking, so it's getting out. So in addition to the smell, you're going to see stuff. You're going to see dripping, you're going to see spraying, You want to check this stuff when the car is up to operating temperature because it's pressurized, and that's where you'll see the steam or the spray marks or the wet spots. You get under the car and look for dripping. There should be physical evidence of that coolant leaking. Obviously, if it gets bad enough, you're going to leak out all your engine coolant and your car will overheat, and that causes potentially really expensive damage. So you want to make sure you figure out where it's coming from and stop it. Troubled spots are often rubber hoses, especially where they're clamped on. They get old and they split and they allow the coolant to escape. Often coolant, when it dries, will leave a kind of a chalky residue like this. So you can kind of tell where something may have been leaking. On this car, it looks like maybe the radiator cap is no longer holding pressure and it's allowing a little bit to escape underneath the cap, and it's kind of running down. You can see signs of it. Smaller leaks that are harder to find, one trick, you can go to an auto parts store and for free you can rent a pressure system that will allow you to pressurize the system when the car is not running, and you can actually hear leaks hissing, or you can see the water coming out. And then obviously a real good indicator that your coolant is leaking is low coolant level in your radiator and or your reservoir. So checking that, seeing a low level, points to a coolant leak. Another common spot for a leak is on the radiator, especially the ones that have the plastic elements where they join the metal. They'll spring leaks, or the plastic itself will crack from age. Now, it actually is possible to get a coolant leak inside your car because your heater core sits right inside underneath your dash, and it can spring a leak, and coolant that's cycling through it will leak out and usually go onto the floorboards up front. So you want to check the carpet up front, make sure that's not wet, because that could be the source of the smell as well. So some people actually like the smell of the next one, and just like coolant, it can be coming from inside or outside the car, and that's gasoline. If you're smelling the gas right after you've refilled or only when your car is full, chances are the tube that goes from your filler down to the tank has a leak somewhere, and it's this area. So similar to coolant leaks, under the hood you should see signs of leaking fuel. You want to check this when the car is running and the fuel system is under pressure, but you can see sprays, you can see drips. You want to check fuel lines, fuel filters. You can also check under the car as the fuel travels from the tank up to the engine. Steel lines will rust and start leaking, and you'll see drips or spray marks. Another common leak spot is the fuel rail. So it's the distribution point where the fuel comes in and goes to your injectors. Can leak in there as well. So if you're smelling gas inside the car, chances are it's something to do with your fuel pump, which is located on the fuel tank, often accessible under the back seat. Now obviously leaking fuel anywhere is a bad deal on a car because you have hot exhaust, you have electrical components. So if you're smelling gas anywhere, you want to get that fixed as soon as possible. So next one is kind of a group of smells. It's really hard to tell the difference because they all kind of smell the same. This is going to be like a burning rubber kind of chemical. Think about like if you threw a plastic bag in a campfire, kind of a nasty chemical smell. This is going to be your melting rubber in the engine compartment. This can be electrical smells, or if you have a manual transmission, could be your clutch. So the simplest reason why you smell burning rubber is because rubber is burning. Really common reason for that is belts. So if your accessory belts are getting old and they're starting to slip, they'll burn. Or if one of the pulleys, alternator, power steering, or an idler pulley bearing is going bad, they'll stop turning and the belt will just be dragging over them and will create a strong burning smell. One way you can know and also diagnose these things is often there will be smoke. So get the car running, see where smoke is coming from. Also, if it's a belt issue, oftentimes you'll get squealing. So when you're starting up the car, you'll get a loud squealing noise. That can indicate that it's the belt that's causing the burning smell. Another reason is you could have wires or hoses that have come loose and are now touching exhaust elements, like your manifold or your exhaust pipe or your muffler. Again, you just want to visually inspect, are things where they are supposed to be? Is there melting? Is there blackening? Another reason for that burning smell is electrical problems. And thankfully, in addition to the smell, usually electrical problems will manifest themselves with dashboard lights. So you'll get a check engine light, or you'll get an alternator light, or the electric elements of your car will stop working in addition to the smell. So if you smell a burning smell inside the car and your radio's not working, chances are there's a short there. Now, you can also have electrical problems under your hood. Fuses will go bad and burn. Alternators will melt internally. Because electrical issues are a really common cause of fires in cars, you want to get to the bottom of it as soon as you can. If you own a manual transmission car, so it has a clutch, and it starts to wear out or starts to slip, it will create a burning smell. Sometimes people describe it as like a burnt peanut butter smell. Obviously, the way to know if that's the case is your clutch will start slipping and not working properly. The next one is a hot, burning, acrid smell. A lot of people describe it as burning carpet. And this is often what happens when your brakes overheat. So there's a few reasons that you might be smelling overheating brakes. And the most common one that I see is when people ride their brakes all the way down a long, steep hill without downshifting. And if you don't know what I mean by downshifting, you can check out this other video we made, link above. If you leave your e-brake on, you don't disengage that before you drive, it'll get these rear brakes super hot. You'll definitely smell it. The brake pedal will feel spongy when your brakes get hot. Like it's not really working like it should. That's another indication. Also keep in mind you could be smelling it from another car in front of you. You can get the smell of brakes in through your AC if it's not set on recirculation mode. Really the way that you want to check it is right after you've driven the car and you're smelling the smell, you want to hop out and get down and just smell, because it could just be one wheel. In rare cases a caliper can get stuck closed and it'll be actually applying the brakes on one wheel. And usually when that happens, you'll feel the car pulling to one side or the other when you're trying to go down a straight highway. Overheating brakes is bad because they'll eventually stop working and then you can't stop your car. The next smell you're all pretty familiar with, and that is exhaust. And when it's in the cab of the car, it's a bad deal. As you probably know, exhaust fumes should come out of this. If it's coming in out anywhere else, it's a problem. Because if it's leaking out at your engine side, your engine's probably not running right. And worse, if it's leaking out underneath the car, it's going to get into the cab, and it's really not good for you. Another symptom of a leaking exhaust is you'll often get a very loud exhaust noise. So that's because the exhaust sound is escaping from a hole before the tailpipe. Really, the only way to diagnose this is through that sound or visual inspection. So you want to go through the engine, look for holes in the exhaust or maybe loose bolts on your manifold. Check the muffler, check the exhaust pipe for rust holes. These are the ways that you're going to see it. So the next one is sort of a sulfury, rotten egg smell, usually coming from your emission system or your catalytic converter. So your catalytic converter is a fancy little device in your exhaust system that's supposed to remove pollution from your exhaust. When it gets clogged up, it starts to smell really weird. That sulfuric sort of nasty smell. And if that's the case, often you'll be throwing check engine lights. Your car may be running kind of sluggish. You may hear some like weird hissing noises underneath the car. So that's other indicators that your catalytic converter is going bad. Also, you can have emissions in general. There's all these little emission systems in your car that deal with exhaust and reburning exhaust. And when they clog up and don't do what they're supposed to do, you can start to smell it inside the car. The next smell is a moldy or musty one. And this is similar to the AC that we already talked about, but instead of coming out of the vents, it's just sort of in the car all the time. And this is due to moisture leaking in somewhere. So if you're getting that nasty, moldy, musty smell and you've already ruled out the AC system, chances are you're getting water into the car somehow. So that's a visual inspection. You're checking for wet spots, along window seals. If you have a moonroof, checking around that, you'll get wet headliner. Again, same thing can happen down low if you're getting wet carpet, water's getting in through door joints or something like that. Also, like we mentioned with the coolant, if your heater core ends up leaking into the carpet up front, you want to check the carpets down around the front. So the last one is a little less common and hopefully never happens to you, but on occasion, animals have been known to crawl into AC vents or somewhere under the firewall and die and produce some really nasty smells that are really hard to track down. So if you're smelling something that is not quite mechanical, it could be a furry friend. So different animals are attracted to different smells, sometimes even chemicals in a car, or they're just looking for a place to make a nest. And so I've heard of animals crawling into AC inlets and dying under the hood somewhere. I don't know, I'm not an animal guy, but if you smell rotting flesh, it just might be. So these were the most common problem smells that you'll encounter in your car. And if I missed one, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Or if this video helped you find the smell that you're experiencing in your car, we want to hear about that too. And also, just a big thank you to our subscribers already. That really helps the channel out and helps us make more videos. If you haven't subscribed, you should definitely do that. click on that notification bell so that you know when we make our next video. But we hope this was helpful, and we'll see you again next time.